Yeah, welcome back to Sitting with Ashley. I'm Ashley. This is Trauma Talks. I'm sorry my thumbnails keep changing. I know that might be frustrating, but I had to get new phones. A lot. So anyway, I want to talk about addiction for this Trauma Talks. I've shared a little bit about some of my struggles with addiction, but I think for the sake of this space, if you're new here, Trauma Talks is the only playlists or the only videos that I'm allowing others to comment on, because I'm hoping that this can become a community space where others feel safe to also share their stories or their struggles, or whatever. Okay. So we are tackling the tougher topics over here together, if you so choose. I am going to be monitoring comments, and there is a rules of engagement list to comment on these videos, okay? Anyway, moving on. Addiction is something that I think more people struggle with than they would like to admit. And I feel like a lot of people don't see the things that they struggle with as addiction because maybe they're not using illegal or illicit drugs, or maybe they're just there's a lot of classism and racism. You know, all the isms are present within the conversation of addiction when we think about society, right? So last time I did a Trauma Talks, we talked about homelessness, and I shared a little bit about my story and shed some light on what it's like to really be homeless and why the problem is there. And I think another part of this project is to alleviate individual responsibility for these things and look at it as a whole societal issue that people struggle with, okay? So addiction, there's lots of forms of addiction, okay? My first addiction, I think, started when I was, I think a lot of kids have addiction to sugar. I think that's something that we really don't talk about as a society. It's something that I really noticed with him, with my child. I don't think it's something that my family noticed with me. Instead, I was like shamed for sweets and stuff. My dad was very disciplined with sweets, like followed the serving sizes. But I struggled with an eating disorder from a very young age because of the way that my family, the women in my family, I think it's a very white family thing to make food. Um, Food was like a weird thing. So I think that at the root of addiction comes this need to control. So I would say an eating disorder. My work through therapy really helped me understand why I had an eating disorder for so long. But when I kind of graduated the eating disorder, um, I eat whatever I want. I don't limit myself at all anymore. I listen to my body, which is something I never used to do. But as far as actually, I was very sick when I was growing up. I was very sick with an eating disorder. And I think that was like the root cause of my other addictions, right? Because then as I grew up, I was introduced to more substances and more behaviors, So I've struggled with nicotine addiction or smoking. I've struggled with, I wouldn't call it alcoholism, because I don't see myself as an alcoholic, but I did struggle with alcohol. Now, the reason I don't label myself that way is because, again, I believe that this society, this consumer-based society, breeds addictive behavior, all right? It is the repetitive and habitual nature of capitalism that breeds people's addictions more than it is, hey, I'm going to become an addict, right? If you think about the habitual and repetitive nature of your day-to-day life under capitalism, you wake up, you take a shower, you get dressed, you go to work, you get your lunch at this time, you take your breaks at this time, you do this, you get on your phone and you scroll at this time, you go to run errands, and you pick up fast food or whatever it is. There's this, every day is the same except a little bit of difference, right? So I feel like with that as a main way of living, right, it's imbalanced when it comes to nature. But with that, it becomes easy to, okay, it's 6 o'clock, it's time for me to turn on the news and drink my beer, right? And then after, 3 months of doing that, you need that beer, right? Or whatever the vice is, whatever it is. So, smoking was a really hard one for me to quit. I mean, all of them are, but I have a tendency to usually quit my addictions cold turkey. Takes a certain amount of self-will to do that. But I've gotten to this point in my life. And I think also another part of this addiction is, again, I kept myself away from harder drugs. I was addicted to Adderall in high school. I was prescribed it and addicted to it, but I started using it. There was this one time we broke the capsule open and sprinkled the little balls into a bowl and we smoked it. So I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, so like what we're seeing now, like fentanyl, meth, at least where I was, it wasn't a thing. The thing that from where I grew up was opioids, downers, and I was an upper girl, so I kept myself away from like cocaine. I had been offered cocaine plenty of times. I never indulged in it because I knew that I have an addictive personality, and I was like, no, that's something I don't want to be addicted to. Like I could see that not working out for me. Right? I use cannabis still as I've changed now that it's become more legalized. It's easier to get. I changed the form in which I use it, but I do eat gummies at nighttime. But I used to smoke a lot of weed. I was diagnosed actually once with like a cannabis addiction. I'm like, you can't be addicted to cannabis. And I mean, my thoughts on that are a little different. I think that, these products that are coming out are probably filled with other addictive qualities or things. So I think about those things, but I enjoy being high. It's good for me. So, I think moderation is another thing. But, like, I've never done fentanyl. I've never done, I was prescribed Percocets. I tried oxycodone once or twice because I was dating an oxycodone addict, and then he got into heroin, and I was like, no, because when I tried oxycodone, I was like, this feels disgusting. I prefer uppers, not downers, so just based on my liking. So anyway, I think that addiction is something that we all face. I think other forms of addiction that people don't acknowledge are like retail therapy. Consumerism is also an addiction, but because it's not like a hard drug and you're not strung out, maybe you have credit card debt, but people can't see that, right? Like your aesthetic is not implicated by having credit card debt. So, I think that everyone in this society has some form of addiction. Even it's everything in moderation. Even really addictive traits around certain wellness, like working out and stuff like that. If you get to a point of obsession, if you're not doing those things to feel good, but you're doing it to, generate like a reaction from others outside of you, things like that, like, I think that people are addicted to like plastic surgery. I made a deal with myself a long time ago that I was like, I might not like how I look, but I don't think I would ever want to look different. And cosmetic surgery is not something that I personally would ever do. At this point in time, I believe even medically for me, it would be something that I would probably just not do. I don't know. As we grow up, those things might be presented to us, but whatever. What's it? What are you addicted to? Flowers. Watermelon. Niall's playing grocery store on his tablet, and he's turning the kitchen into a grocery store. He's very obsessed with the produce section right now. Right? Mm-hmm. We're using produce to learn math. Like the other day we were opening up pea pods and we were counting the peas and then we were adding up the peas. Anyway, I think one of the things I'm not a fan of anonymous programs. When I started facilitating mental health programs, like when I was backing up before that, when I was incarcerated the first time around, I stayed in a mental institution, and like I said, I was diagnosed with that cannabis reliance or whatever, and I was just laughing. But I was on a dual diagnosis unit, right? So I was like diagnosed bipolar 1 and cannabis reliance, I think is the word it was. It wasn't addiction, it was reliance. And the dual diagnosis, I feel like a lot of the treatment that people get around addiction is blame, shame, shit like that. Like embarrassing people to a point of recovery. So I'm not a fan of the 12-step programs. That boyfriend that I had who started doing heroin, his best friend, who was also my friend, came here to Arizona. Oh wow, that was loud. He's working on the roof. For treatment. A lot of kids from Wisconsin actually come to Arizona for opioid addiction treatment. It's kind of a thing, or at least it was like 10 years ago. But he was in, my friend Adam, he was in anonymous programs through these recovery programs, and he lost his battle. He lost his battle the year that Niall was born, 2019, that summer. I believe he killed himself or he overdosed on his birthday. He was a very poetic person. But the reason that I do the work that I do, and I was in LA facilitating these mental health groups the way I was, is because that I don't believe, again, I already talked about how society breeds addiction problems, unhealthy coping mechanisms with that repetitive behavior, right? The muscle memory even, the autopilot. And it's just not conducive to humans and the way we live. So when I started all of my programs, one of the main things that I do when I do work with folks is to have them recognize how they're just being moved within this system that we are in. And I think that when we alleviate this individual blame and shame from these taboo topics, it's a lot easier for people. It's not like a deflection, right? It's not like I have no responsibility in my own behavior. It's all them. It's not a victimhood. It's more of I understand why I'm moving this way when I look at how I have to move, right? And so understanding that this system does want us to be addicted. It's in the best interest of capitalism and consumerism for us all to have any of the addictions that I've already said. And illegal street drugs is a great underground for, criminal activity in the government, right? The government put crack cocaine into the hood. Baby Daddy was a victim of that. That's why he robbed banks, was to get an next fix, right? So it's not just you're a bad person because you have this addiction. There's an addiction because you are seeking something outside of yourself. There's a need of something outside of yourself. There's a behavior or something that you're masking. There's a root cause to addiction. Addiction itself is a symptom. It's not the problem. Watermelon. You have a booger. Watermelon. Melon. Yeah, you can just say melon. There's different kinds of melons, though. Everything has a word, honey. We're really good at numbers because they have a specific pattern, but the alphabet is just... There's no rhyme or reason, so we're not there yet. But anyway. Hey, can you please stay inside? Don't go outside. So, I hope this helps. I quit smoking last year, and then I started drinking again, because I was like, meh, and I quit coffee the year before I quit smoking, because I was like, I need to quit coffee because caffeine is making me need the nicotine, and the nicotine is making me need the cannabis, and the cannabis is making me need the beer, right? So I was like, ah. So I had to quit. Like I said, I have a pretty good success rate with quitting cold turkey because I don't do anything too harsh to alter my brain chemicals. But I've also been in therapy for a long time. I mean, I'm not in therapy right now, but I was. So I've worked to the root issue of all of these things, and so I can kind of, when I get into these habits or these addictive behaviors or patterns, I recognize it. I'm able to see it for myself, which a lot of people aren't. But yeah, so I've never done meth. I've never done fentanyl. I've never done anything like that. And so I know that those are much harder to quit. But again, the addiction itself is more of a chemical thing at that point when you're using things that are that harsh. Or, you know, pills or anything like that, like opioids or whatever. Because eventually, like I saw with Adam and my ex, it was like both of them were doing opioids, and then they started snorting them, and then they started smoking them, and then they started shooting them, and it was like this insane progression that I was witnessing, but I wasn't a part of. It's a watermelon. I'll get you one the next time we get groceries. Watermelon is such a good snack. I don't know if they have watermelons anymore because it's pumpkin season though, babe. But I don't know, probably. But again, remembering that just because you may have some sort of addiction, maybe it's fast food, maybe it's, you know, like I used to drink Red Bull and eat Taco Bell. When I was in my eating disorder, I would only eat like Snickers a day, right? Like, so whatever it is, recognize that. I think the hardest part is to, yes, acknowledge that you have an addiction, but also alleviating that shame and blame for yourself, and acknowledging that, first of all, you're not alone. There's plenty of other people who are struggling with things, and right, like we already said, a lot of people use retail as an addiction, and a lot of people have, you know, fucking credit card debt, but you can't see it, so you're not judged for it, right? You can see tweakers, you can see the Fenty fold, right? You can see those things, so people are like degraded. And a lot of those people driving by those folks are like, I am a good person. And they're like, you know, $300,000 in debt. I don't fucking know. I don't have a credit card, again, because I have addictive qualities. I was like, I will never get a credit card. It's not a good idea for me. So I don't have credit card debt, thank God. Because if I did have a credit card, and I've thought about it this past year, I was like, maybe I should just get a credit card. But I didn't. And so anyway, whatever it is for you, just acknowledge it. Acknowledge that there's, you know, an imbalance, because that's basically what it is. It's just, there's some sort of root cause why we are doing that. When I did finally was able to quit smoking, I was like, I'm really harming my body, and I'm starting to get physical symptoms, right? So I'm like, my throat hurts, my teeth are doing things, right? Like my body is responding to this in a negative way, so I need to stop harming myself, right? And I think a lot of the times with addiction, it does take that point of, I'm ready to stop, right? And a lot of people never get there. And another thing about addiction is that if you are outside of it, if it's someone that you know or someone that's close to you, people are not going to be receptive to that, especially if they're in the middle of their addiction. And there's a lot of things that we can do to support folks without enabling them, without being mean to them. But we do need to have more compassion with folks, about folks who do have addiction. And I think when we look back at the system and when we start to understand how and why we are participating in this, and why we're having a hard time with it, which is why we're even using whatever substance or whatever behavior it is that we're using, again, that alleviates a lot of that shame. And I think shame is one of the things that keeps people low. And I think that's one of the things that the anonymous programs really, they do a hard time with. They individualize each person, because trust me, I went to my fair share of Narcotics Anonymous and other groups, court ordered at one point in my life, And I think that it was never helpful for me, which is why I decided to change the model. So when I was doing mental health groups and addiction and stuff in Skid Row, which a lot of people are facing homelessness and addiction and mental health issues, it was better for us to look at things as a whole and how we're like players in this game, right? So like think of a board game and think of like the little pieces, right? Instead of you being the entire problem, it's like, no, you're just this little piece in this large system that goes against our human nature, and we cope with that in different ways. So, um, if you are in an active addiction, regardless of the severity of it, I hope that you can find your way out, and I hope that this frame can help you with that. You are not the problem. What happened to you that you might not remember is part of the problem. The way that people have treated you, the way that you have, the things that have been expected of you, all of those are factors in why you do the things you do. It's not because you're a bad person. It's pretty much based in some sort of trauma at some point in time. So, have a good one.